Esteemed ladies and gentlemen, I'm happy on the occasion of our new meeting at the Sixth International Conference on Security. Last year, we have discussed with the defense ministers, politicians, and experts of other countries threats coming on behalf of international terrorism. Despite of the fact that this topic is prevailing in the discussions at all different levels, we cannot coordinate the actions to struggle terrorism and to take decisions to eradicate it. Until now, we failed to do that. Political difference and mutual mistrust impede that to combine healthy forces to fight against this global evil. And the idea which was expressed at the 70th Assembly of the United Nations initiative about the creation of international and broad coalition against terrorism was not supported. At the same time, the activity of terrorists is becoming ever stronger, and thousands of refugees flee from the disastrous areas, and many terrorists flow to different countries to execute their evil plans. And considering the fact that until today the main threat to global security remains terrorism, we consider it important to come back to the previous year's agenda of this conference. Distinguished colleagues, today, the front line and the forward edge of the battle area to ISIS is Syria. And here we see the concentration of the major forces of these organizations, and the gang groups are controlled from here. And that's why the leadership of Russia decided to offer to the legitimate government of Syria help in the struggle with ISIS. After the liberation of Aleppo, the potential of terrorists was seriously undermined, and Syrian forces, with the support of aerospace forces, continue to deliver strikes and blows on terrorism. And thanks to the center of settlement, peaceful settlement, and about 1,500 settlements decided to discontinue the armed struggles with the official government forces. Coordinated actions of Russia, Iran, and Turkey, which were the guarantor states, made it possible in Astana to ensure the direct dialogue between the armed opposition and Syrian government. I'd like to point out that this agreement about the truce in separate regions is observed and honored. And along with that, by joint efforts of three countries, made it possible to solve the problem about the delineation on ground, Jabhat al-Nusra units, and constructive opposition. I would like to underline that the year of negotiations with the representatives of previous American administration never yielded any positive results. Today, the priority of our work in Syria is the political settlement and coming back of the country and bringing back of the country to the peaceful life. And here we need to avoid the errors made in Afghanistan and Iraq due to the lack of attention on behalf of the international community towards political processes in this region and their restoration. We need to have a comprehensive strategy of joint actions to liberate these areas from bandits, and the basic elements should be the struggle with the dissemination of ISIS ideology, development of new constitution for the country, to support humanitarian aid the population and ensure our mine-sweeping operations. As far as the last point is concerned, the unit of the Russian Center of Humanitarian Demining have cleared the area in the ancient Palmyra from hazardous explosive ammunitions. We have cleared more than 1,000 square miles of Aleppo in eastern area. However, there is still a lot of job for sappers to continue their operations, and we hope that the UNMAC service of United Nations on demining will join us in this effort. I propose to create a coalition from interested countries who would be interested in mine-sweeping operations in Syria, and a fund to finance the commercial companies which will be invited to support these kinds of operations. I presume that coordinated actions that commercial organizations and the states will be able to clear the territory of the country from hazardous explosive subjects and remnants of war. And I believe that the members of the delegates will offer some other proposals. On my behalf, I would like also to share the experience which we gained by using the aerospace forces in Syria. Tactical methods of terrorism were properly studied, and Russian armament and hardware in complex conditions demonstrated state-of-the-art resilience and redundancy. And as far as Syria, in many areas in Syria, the situation is really close to a catastrophe, and we supply humanitarian aid and help to these areas, and we are thankful to those partners who responded to this proposal and also offered humanitarian aid to Syrian People's Republic. Russian military ensured cooperation with regional units of International Red Cross and United Nations. That makes it possible, without any political preferences, to offer help to those people who need help all over the country. The local population is also given the medical and health care, and we have deployed the mobile hospitals, and more than 12,000 Syrians received medical help, and we are going to continue this kind of work. And we continue to ensure cooperation with the United States of America and coalition led by them. However, we have not reached any feasible results. In 2015, we signed a memorandum to prevent incidents in the airspace in order to prevent conflicts when Air Force operations. And as you know, we have discontinued this after the cruise missile strike on Shayrat airfield, and we believe this is a rough violation of international right. Besides, the actions of Washington create a threat to the lives of our men in Syria who are fighting against terrorism, and such steps force us to take additional steps to ensure safety and security of our servicemen in Syria. At the same time, if the United States are truly targeted to eliminate ISIS in the country, we are prepared to support their effort. And today, the dissemination of ISIS is not limited itself to Syria and Iraq. And ISIS sworn many units and detachments in vast territories of Middle East and Africa. And their success perhaps could be partially justified, let's say, by their successes in Libya because of disintegration of efforts of international community. And this region requires support and constructive actions of political and military forces. Distinguished colleagues, the program of the 6th Moscow conference also includes the topic of European security, which should be also led in the context of fight with international terrorism and by joint efforts of all parties involved, including Russia. We need to develop effective anti-terrorist strategy. However, instead of unification, of coordination, Europe is cultivating anti-Russian phobia and threats of so-called alleged threats from the East. They threaten the population and also misuse the terminology and make the situation difficult. And the fortification of our defensive capabilities is very balanced and is a reaction to the actions of NATO. They are developing the cross-border infrastructure and fortify their military contingents. NATO is a military and political bloc. It's not the society of those who collect stamps, and they are involving into the orbit new states. And latest decision of accepting Montenegro is one more evidence, and their military potential is close to zero, but their geographical position makes it possible to increase their influence on the Balkans. And the same promotion of North Atlantic Treaty Organization is taking place in the Arctic, in the north of Norwegia, close to the Russian border. There is a modern test ground where, on a rotation basis, NATO contingent is being located, and the activity in the framework as a police function of NATO by patrolling the airspace of Baltics is also part of the so-called zone of restriction, which also embraces the Kaliningrad Oblast and the eastern part of the Baltic Sea. And we consider these actions of NATO as a demonstration of power in protecting their interests. And when discussing European security, it was very important to observe and prevent incidents in airspace and at sea. And we believe this is a matter of great importance and a matter of principles when the level of trust is so low. And the initiative of the President of Finland with activated transponder, which was supported by President Putin, was ignored by NATO. And security in the world is influenced also by the increase of the anti-missile infrastructure. And many countries are already involved to position both maritime and land-based anti-missile systems. In 2017, we are celebrating the 40 years of anti-missile defense agreement, and this document still maintains its importance. And the decision of the USSR and the United States to sign this agreement confirms the fact that deployment of anti-missile defense is the destabilizing factor which reduces the threshold for implementation of nuclear weapons. And the agreement which was signed between NATO and Russia 20 years ago, how to bring back its key thesis: Russia and NATO should not be considered as enemies, but should focus their efforts to overcome previous confrontations and rivalry. But now we see the change in the behavior of Brussels in structuring a relationship with Russia. Today, Europe is ready to move forward to restore trust, and more often we hear the words to re-establish dialogue without any pressure on behalf of sanctions. And we count on a constructive dialogue during this conference, and specific proposals to restore cooperation were voiced out by Russian experts in July of last year and are still on the agenda for these negotiations. And the first step to bring positions closer, to make jointly the estimation of threats which determine the military doctrines and military constructions. We are prepared to discuss that with experts, and now it is to the NATO to decide what to do. You have to discontinue to threaten people with Russia. Esteemed ladies and gentlemen, the meetings of the heads of the defense ministries became a tradition. And I would like to thank you that for your opportunity to take part in the work of this forum. And we are most interested in new ideas and very open to discussion of new initiatives which fortify joint security. In order to solve all the missions and targets, and we need to define common challenges and threats. Today, it is extremely important to find accord on the direction of cooperation, and based on the experience, understanding the input of very respective state. I wish all participants of the conference fruitful and successful work. Thank you for your attention.